Today, we are focusing on a topic in the tradition of the Center of Excellence, a topic that is relevant, titled Paradox of Migration in the Context of a Plural Society. I will not pronounce the last part of it, the addendum, because that is where my question is coming from. So, Dr. Ibo did already. But I think I love the paradox of migration in the context of a plural society. It is indeed timely, just like the previous presentations, and I believe we will all learn today. Please, we will keep to the 30 minutes for Dr. Ibode, and then please, when it's your time to ask questions or comments, kindly, please limit yourself to 30 seconds or at best 1 minute, so that I do not have to be unethical to stop you or talk on top of your voice. Our society has been influenced by this transdisciplinary study we call migration. Today we speak about migration, whether in the context of internal or external migration. We speak in the context of forced migration or voluntary migration. Then we speak in the context of the fact that as Africans, as Black people, we are perhaps the most vulnerable when it comes to migration, whether you talk about forced or voluntary. Forced in terms of through the Saharan slave route, forced in terms of the Indian Ocean trade route, forced in terms of the transatlantic slave route, and of course, forced in terms of even the developed economy since the 15th or the 16th century, so to speak, as a result of the need for the machines that were developed in Europe to really get the raw materials that were abundant in Africa to be shipped over. And in recent times, you will see people advertising for H1, H2 visa. Last week, I was not surprised when I read the call for professional skill and encouragement of migration from Africa in particular, from the Australian government. And one thing that catches my attention is the fact that there is a new dimension to migration, and that is in the context of professionally skilled people. And that was the target. And somebody argued within the government over there, said, well, we are not using our money to train them. They've been trained by their government. They've been trained by other agencies. They are now skilled. And those are the type of migrants we're looking for. And that is such the extent of the many branches of migration in the global context. So it is so apt for this center to be looking at, migration within the context of the global, in terms of globalization, or migration in terms of internal migrations, moving from Kano to settle in Djibouti, from Owerri to settle in Kano, from Sokoto to settle in Lagos, etc., for various reasons. So today, the guest speaker is Dr. Musbao Oyebode. He is a lecturer in the Department of Peace Studies and Conflict Resolution, and it is a pleasure to have him. Again, his title, his paper is titled Paradox of Migration in the Context of a Plural Society. Dr. Oyebode, you have 30 minutes, sir, and I thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. You may start.
Thank you, Prof. And good morning to everybody here present. The paper is titled Paradox of Migration in the Context of Plural Society. And I've added focus on peace in Nigeria because when I started the work, I discovered that looking at migration in the global context with regards to paradox would be too wide. So I decided to contextualize it so that I'll be able to cite obvious examples within the Nigerian environment. Okay, so the abstract, please, I hope you are controlling the, so I don't need the abstract. I don't want to go over the abstract. So please take me to slide 1. So the abstract is just there for display. So, okay. Languages, myths of origin, and geographical locations have been used to classify human beings into different ethnic groups, while the color of the skin has been added to define races. And probably that is why we are able to say we and them, using fluid and instrumentally constructed social differentiation in order for us to be able to relate or to identify, in order to be able to get our needs, which are both psychological, affection needs, or whichever. But this thing is socially constructed. The fact is that God has created us as human beings, and we all look alike, and we are human beings. But one way by which we have tried to beat the geographical barrier is through migration. But migration has not been able to remove all the other differentiations that we have in terms of myth of origin, the color of the skin, the cultures that are peculiar to individual race or ethnic group. And that is why in the course of migration, it's always accompanied with positive and negative baggage. While migration is liberating in some cases, it constrains autonomy, blurs identity, and limits freedom of the individuals and groups. So once you migrate, you cannot continue to claim all the things that belong to you. Actually, people tend to look at migration studies as something that should probably produce certain expected results. And that is why scholars have observed that the problem of migration studies has been the exclusion of the mainstream social sciences and tendencies for it to be perceived as merely descriptive and administrative field. That is, looking at the movement of people, what they have been able to achieve in the course of their migration, and whether it has been beneficial or not, without relating it to other issues in the social sciences, though the trend is changing now. Scholars have relied on proposition and assumptions that tend to see migration as having a powerful effect. Where this term is borrowed from mass communication, need effect theory, socio-economic, political, and psychological conditions of migrants, and those left behind at home and host. That is when it has a powerful effect, that it is predictable that when you migrate, you are going to have probably the things that are push you to migrate, and probably that when you get there, the pull factors that are brought you to that place will be accomplished. It is not always the case. Migrants of today are more propelled by multidimensional needs, which are physiological, safety, and affectionate in forms. If we look at human history, the earlier migrants, they are wanderers. They only wander about to satisfy their physiological needs of food, clothing, etc. and that. But these days, migration is informed by more than psychological needs. We look for safety, we look for affection, which are very important to human existence in modern day. These needs are constantly dictated by the dynamics of social collectivity, and these needs are mostly incompatible with those of others. And that is why we talk of a conflict. Once your needs are incompatible with those of the others, in the course of migration, you are likely to encounter difficulties. You are likely to encounter conflicts. And because the other people also have needs that they want to fulfill, which may be incompatible with those of yours. And that is why scholars have come up with the idea of protracted social conflicts as propounded by Azar in 1991. Migration studies as a field of knowledge is complex and multidisciplinary engagement in modern day because of all these factors that we have highlighted above. So migration is linked to complex ways to class, gender, generation, ethnicity, and other social cleavages, which are embodied in hierarchies of power and social status, in position in home and host communities, and in work and domestic relations, some of which may be transformed in the course of the migratory process. That is according to year 2010. And those of us who have had cause to leave our homes, at times we lament that, oh, if I were to, all these things that I'm confronting will not be my portion. And that is the experience that goes with migration. And according to him, we seek to link micro-level understanding of migration to macro-level trends in development and globalization through analysis of the social dynamics of migratory process. So a lot of other things are coming to how we look at migration. For example, globalization as a field, which is very recent, has affected the causes, and probably the trend in migration. Those before we discuss has brought about the idea of migration paradox and other contextually related views. A few scholars have worked in this area, and the positive outcome of migration, especially as it affects the giving and receiving communities, is not predictable, most especially when they are not culturally homogeneous. And we like to cite that of Fairchild's 1911 findings. We reveal that immigration has not possibly lessened American population and has failed to increase it to any considerable extent. In fact, the idea of earlier scholars was that once people migrate to a place, it will affect the population. And he has proved this with a lot of data, showing that as the host community are not producing, the migrants are producing, so it's equal. According to him, because of cheap labor, because of the need to employ migrants that have come, most people in America at that time who are indigenous do no longer produce children. At the individual migrant level, while it is true that many people find success through migration, many others become victims of the cruel pitfalls of the migration process. That is according to Se10 2019. Integration of individuals as a result of immigration is incompatible with pluralistic society and empirically incorrect because complete assimilation of immigrants into the rich society is by no means a necessary outcome. That is according to Sponge 2014. And probably I need to talk briefly on this because that is the crux of this paper. That most of us tend to think that once people migrate to a place, they are going to be completely integrated. Integration is never complete with any migrants, and there are a number of factors that do not allow this complete immigration process to be complete. And probably when we go on in the paper, we see that in Britain, the Scottish in London are still distinct from the Irish, despite the fact they are all called, they have the same color. The Hausa, the Igbo in Lagos still maintain ethnic identities despite over 100 years of relations in the same space in Lagos. And even if you go to Kano, you go to Kaduna, there have been migrants who have stayed more than 100 years, even their offspring not knowing where they call their homes, yet they still have that sentimental attachment to their homeland, and they are never fully integrated. This situation, according to Krug and Skinner, is called comparative integration context theory. In the light of the findings, they propose the testing of alternative provisions of migrant experiences, and probably this is what we attempt to do in this paper. Except in few studies, the problem has been intellectual popular narrated by neoclassic theorists. The few studies that have looked at rational and irrational behavior of migrants and hosts and consequential patterns of migration are not located in Nigeria. And that is the problem of this paper, that we have not been able to get any work that has worked on paradox of migration in Nigeria. People have chosen different topics, looking at integration, looking at, but the idea of looking from the paradoxical implication of migration has not been cited in literature. There may be a few, but unfortunately, I've not been able to lay my hands on. So this paper is a disquisition to provoke debate on different components of migration in an attempt to juxtapose ambiguities and clarities, refute the thesis and antithesis of migration, and examine migration in relation to other subjects of social concern. And therefore, we have chosen peace as a field of study of interest to posit on perils of migration, as migrants are taken as both rational and irrational beings. The rationality, let me explain it. For example, it is rational to think that, okay, I belong to this place, I don't know my parents' origin, to begin to think that I'm Hausa man if I've stayed in the north for 30, 50, or I was born there. But the rationality is I still try to have sentiment towards a place that I've never been. And that is why we always talk of African diaspora. Some of them have never known Nigeria, some of them will never know Nigeria, but they are still irrationally attached to the sentiment of nationalism. So the assumption of this research that migration, annexation, occupation, conquest, ethnicity, and political autonomy are inseparable components that generate conflicts that result in immigration paradox. Thus, this study attempts to answer the following questions. What is the situation of internal migration in Nigeria? What are the reasons for increased rural urban migration in Nigeria? Is there any nexus between migration and peace in Nigeria? In spite of inter-ethnic relations arising from internal migration, what are the contradictions leading to regular call for restructuring, self-determination, and in few extreme cases, secession by separatist groups? What are the migration issues arising from COVID-19? So the scope of the study is limited to a few areas. We are going to look at internal migration, we are going to look at internal migrants, rural urban migrants, amorphous migrants, and of course that is my own term, which I will explain later on. The returning migrants in Nigeria, plural society, different ways these phenomena have been instrumental to the contradiction arising from migration in the past and now. I've looked at a number of concepts to elucidate further on this paper: migration, internal migration, plural society, nationalism, peace, and conflict. I've chosen to highlight some of them, though they are more than this, but we look at internal migration for International Organization for Migration, the way they define migration as a phenomenon reflecting movement of a person away from his or her place of usual. I don't want to waste time looking at these different concepts because many scholars that have come earlier have looked at migration. So I wish that we go to the other slide so that I can look at the concepts that are very probably relatively new to this discourse. So in the light of the thrust of this discourse, internal migration will be defined as movement beyond one's cultural homeland. There are people who move within one local government or the other. They are also called internal migrants. But for the purpose of this paper, internal migrants will be taken as people who have moved out of their area. So we are, please, the PowerPoint is too fast. I'm still looking at the idea of pluralism, how people have described it in literature and how important it is to this discourse. According to Fornella, 1948, he described a society that is separated into various communities according to differences in language, race, religion, and ethnic configuration as plural society. And this is further explained by Barth in 1969. And in nutshell, pluralism belief is a belief that people of different social classes, religions, race, and language should live together in a society with due attention and respect paid to their differences. How much of this have we been able to achieve in Nigeria, despite the long history of migration, is the concern of this paper. So we have other, please, upward slide. Apart from, I've also looked at nationalism as an ideology and as a sentiment. And according to Luke Patter and Adeshi 2014, I've tried to see how they look at it, and I've also tried to look at the at how ideology evolves from political, social, and economic system characterized by the promotion of interests of a particular nation, people, ethnic group. In the plural side, each ethnic group embraces nationalism as a sentiment to gain control and dominance over others in order to be able to pursue national agenda that can bring national identity and development to them at the expense of the state. Nigeria is a nation state consisting of many ethnic nationalities, and that is why it has been difficult for us to work together to attain. I've not dealt with the idea of a peace conflict because I know they are familiar concepts to all of us, but in the actual paper, it is there. Let me quickly go to the theoretical underpinning of this paper. The push-pull model, first point by Se10. People have come with this as well in this paper. The push factors include demographic pressure, poverty, social and political hardship. The pull factors include economic, political, and social prosperity, freedom of the prosperity receiving country, etc., like that. But there are two other theories that I want to look at, which I think the last one will be most important for this paper. So I need to see the next slide so that I can now talk on the other. The word system theory was developed by sociologist Wallerstein in 2004. It is also known as word systems analysis or the word system perspective. It is also known as it is an approach to world history and social change that suggests that there is a world economic system in which some countries benefit while others are exploited. Well, this theory is very relevant to this paper, and I look at it from the rural-urban migration. If we look at it at the national level, why do we have rural-urban migration? Because the urban center is more attractive to people, and because the urban center has probably taken away all the good things that are present in rural areas to develop urban centers, and therefore everybody wants to enjoy the goodies at the rural urban. For example, people who live in rural areas are deprived of the exploitation of their resources. And so the inhabitants of the urban centers take this at the detriment of the rural dwellers. That is why we have what we call metropolitan civilization now. Migration systems and network theory focuses on that is the third theory, nexus between people at origin and destination. And Massey, 1988, defined migration network as set of impersonal ties that link migrants, former migrants, and non-migrants in origin and destination areas through the bonds of kinship, friendship, and shared community origin. That is this major theory that we are going to make use of in this paper. And it is germane in explaining how the new social structure for grounded on nationalism and parochial identities, both the migrants and the hosts, interrelate in both negative and positive dimensions. Ethnic groups tend to cluster in particular cities or areas in a city where they can form new structures. We had probably they call descendants union, club, ethnic club, ethnic society, etc. like that. And that is why we have paid more attention to this theory than the other two that have been highlighted. So the methodology of this study, it is a descriptive study anchored on qualitative analysis of observable behaviors of migrants and hosts in Nigeria's sociopolitical context. It is historical and contextual analysis of Nigerian internal migration dynamics and pluralism and how they affect peace. We have concentrated mostly on the observation of the situation in Nigeria, and that this has been substantiated with secondary data sourced from books, journals, newspapers, and internet. However, it should be mentioned in this that this work is in progress, as interview and focus group discussion will be conducted to achieve triangulation, that is multiple method of data gathering, where the paper will finally be fine-tuned. The report of this study engages thematic analysis of documented peace practices of migrants and hosts in Nigeria's plural milieu. So like I've said, that we are going to put our report in teams. So the first team is Nigerian migration trajectory. internal migration in Nigeria are in phases. According to INIGI 2003, internal migration in Nigeria presents a rather curious but complex trajectory. The Nigeria crisis situation of migrants has some historic wonder too, because they are in phases, and most of the things that have happened in the past continue to affect the way we think. So before the 1944 creation, there were independent ethnic groups, but political groups like Kanem Empire, Benin Empire, Sokoto Empire, Oyo Empire, Kwaraja Empire, just to mention a few. And when migration started, they were informed by a certain movement. One, please, I need the PowerPoint up. I need the PowerPoint to move up. Okay. The next slide. The initial movement was for the purpose of slave raiding, marauding, occupation, and sorry. So the initial movement was to capture slaves by marauders, while people want to occupy another space, which some other people have been there before, and therefore they probably engage in conflict to push them away or to even consume them. And we can get examples nationally from that of America, from Canada, where there are aborigines who have been consumed by migrants who became permanent settlers there. Well, there are other phases, the ones that happened after the slave trade, during colonialism, etc. like that. But the summary, we have also looked at the ones that are happening recently due to conflict from different parts of Nigeria. And we have tried to provide the latest data that we could access in this study. We have also looked at the population housing census of 2006 and the revelation that there are about 10% of migrants in Nigeria. But they did not explain whether these migrants are migrants within Nigeria, internal migrants, or people have migrated to other climes. But most internal migrants in Nigeria are difficult to classify as either permanent or temporary. And earlier I decided, please, the next slide. The next slide, please. Okay. I think it is, okay, it is far from what I need, but I think we need to look at propellants of urban migration. Well, internal migration, sorry, the thing is moving faster. I don't know if I can get control of it, but I'm not able to share my screen from this end. I have my PowerPoint. Well, I think from what I have, we are being able to highlight some of the different phases of migration in Nigeria, and we have also provided some figures of migration, and we have also looked at urban and rural urban migration. And in this study, we discovered that there are about 60% of, if we take the entire number of migrants in Nigeria, about 60% of them reside in the urban center. And why do they reside in the urban center? Because there are problems with social amenities, inadequate employment opportunities, lack of higher institutions, climate change, and conflict in our rural areas. The desire to get better living conditions has also pushed people to urban center, and failure to attain rural development. And that is why about 60% of internal migrants reside in urban center. There are failed programs to check rural urban migration in Nigeria, which include better life program, women in agriculture, primary health care, etc. All these are failed once the sponsors withdraw their sponsorship, or probably once the initiator of the idea leaves government. So internal migration as peace platform, I think this is very important, because that is where we are going to look at the contradictions. And I think I will want that Okay, thank you. What we are saying in essence is that when we talk of paradox of migration, we are not saying that migration is not beneficial, and we are not saying that it has not achieved a result. Paradox means something that is contradictory. I mean, giving hope and disillusionment, giving results, getting achievements, etc. like that. And these are some of the positive things that have been achieved through migration in Nigeria, improving a lot of the individual achievement and social development, transforming the places of origin and people, including new ways of life, improve family living standards, which people have dealt with extensively in the previous seminars. So I now want to look at internal migration as conflict harbor, and that is the concentration of this paper. Disruption of social cohesion in rural areas, human trafficking, forced child labor, prostitution, they are regarded as potentially contributing to urban unemployment and pollution and waste management problems. Interpersonal conflict arising from expected outcomes, successes, failure, and regrets, happiness, and happiness. Somebody has dealt with the psychology effect of migration, especially when your vision is not met. There can be trauma, there can be psychological dissonance, etc. like that. Intrapersonal conflict arising from expected outcomes. So there are many. For example, it is paradoxal that when people migrate to escape negative cultural practice, they may continue to suffer the consequence of those practices because the people in their new abode may be ignorant of what actually precipitated their movement. And so such people continue to suffer that cultural thing they are running away from, or probably they find themselves in an even tougher cultural environment. In spite of long lists of migration on permanent, temporary, or seasonal basis, there's pervasive prejudice, stereotyping, and hostility among ethnic groups, and these feelings are expressed in the use of negative words in private discussion and print media among Nigerians. With regards to internal migration, it is argued that citizens of both communities express hatred towards migrants as competition for resources becomes intense. Local population find it difficult to cope with strangers, and we have had a lot of disputes regarding that. In pursuit of group company in Nigeria, plural-side migrants become another weapon in the armory of group antagonism. In fact, that is why in some cases, when people migrate and they form cluster in the new city, they now import these militant groups like Odua People's Congress, Arewa Boys, Masop, and they have branches in their new settlement. The spread of Islam and by migrants to locations known with particular religion has led to interreligious conflict. And we have examples of Sharia controversy in the north and the different religious conflicts that have happened. So some of these religious conflicts or ethnic conflicts are wrapped in ethnicity or religion, but the cause, the main issue behind the conflict may be economic or political. Seasonal migration is a trigger of farmer others conflict in north central Nigeria because of the problem in the Lake Chad region. There are people who move in droves to areas that do not naturally belong to them, and they want to claim ownership of that place. This is a kind of paradox of migration. Boro Fulani is saying, for example, another community in South often engage in conflict with Yoruba over ownership of farmland. This is quite ironic as the location is generally known to be homeland of Yoruba people. And so when people begin to tell stories, we came here over 200 years ago, but when you came, did you meet some indigenes there? Is it because you have superior power that you have overcome them? And that probably accounted for the problem in Kaduna South till today, where people are able, Hausa migrants are able to overcome the indigenes who were there before them. The contradiction arising from migration and impact on the Nigerian project. Please, I need that to go up. I need that slide to go up. The contradictions arising from migration and impact on the Nigerian project. Rural-urban migrations are led to congestion of cities, poverty, and social crisis. And especially, we think that when we migrate, we are going to get better ways of life. In most cases, especially among the poor, it is not always the same. It's not always the case. Some migrants claim ownership of some places in spite of geographical and historic evidence. I was illustrated with the Kaduna South, predominantly inhabited by some 30 tribes, the South American ethnic groups, as an obvious reference, according to Subiru in 1996. And the situation is still pervasive till today. The upsurge in ethnic politics and religious background have become a serious bane of national development. Rejection of the federal government rural agenda is a pointer to this, to the fact that no matter how good a program is, once we read sentiment into it as a result of migration or fear of migration, there will be a problem. Communal conflicts arising from disputed issues of settlement. We have mentioned that in spite of the fact that in 1973, or probably in 1970, when the Civil War ended, the federal government pronounced to keep Nigeria as a task that must be done, has not been achieved through inter-ethnic relations, then through migration due partly to nuances and nepotism of internal migrants in Nigeria and the host as well. And the NYC has not always been able to achieve that internal migration as envisaged. There are contradictory migration issues arising from COVID-19. Accusation based on suspicion of colonization and possible genocide by coming from the southeast. Some southern elites strongly believe that there is a hidden agenda behind the influx of Almakiri into the south. There's perception of the Almakiri as possible agents of Boko Haram. Just yesterday, I was reading a paper. Somebody sacked his security man because he's an Hausa man, and because he thought that it could be a Boko Haram agent, only to employ another person from another tribe who now proved to be more dangerous than the Hausa he has sacked. In fact, the man nearly took his life. He's from his tribe, and he thought that hiring somebody from his tribe will be more peaceful or more engaging. The indigenous people of Biafra also decided to the idea of hidden agenda. And other traditional rulers also called for caution with regards to how people are moving towards the southwest. But in essence, all this, the existing business of migrants in the north may also be threatened due to hostility if this trend continues. In conclusion, the concluding part, please. Migration is used to build the barrier of geography and create intermingling of peoples of different places across the world. However, it has not succeeded in erasing other elements of racism, ethnicity, and group identity. It is both functional and dysfunctional to plural society with multiple cultural, multiple linguistic, multiple group identities, which often clash because of different interests they have. Rural-urban migration continues to be on the increase as a result of failure of development programs in the past. There's limitation of migration potential to achieve structural change, especially when the elite, when there's elite complicity with regards to what is needed. You see, people in Abuja, you don't hear them talk much of I'm from different type of this. Well, once they are able to share the goodies of office, they become one. People in the Senate, people in the House of Representatives, ministers, you will not hear them talk of ethnic groups because they are already sharing the goodies. But when there's elite fragmentation, there's a fight between them. They take recourse to using ethnicity to work on migrants to become the harmony of conflict. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yobode, for the presentation. I posted on the chat section that if you have a question or comment, you should please let me know so that I can I can unmute you. Let me start by saying that, well, what a title and what a wonderful presentation by Dr. Yebode. And the first question is, what exactly is paradox of migration? What exactly is paradox of migration? Are we talking about change? Are we talking about alteration in status? Very, very important. And then when you made mention of the fact that the literature is still ongoing, or perhaps absence of literature in terms of studies that has really focused on paradox, so titled, I begin to think about sharing with you some of my own knowledge. And I want you to take note of the working papers of the Migration Institute, also the Amsterdam Institute for Social Science Research. And more importantly, there are several publications that actually focus on the paradox of migration, if indeed our definition is within the same context. That is, for instance, there has been a study about the Awori major ethnic group in Lagos State today, the Awori factor, published in 2006. There are some articles within an edited volume also focusing on the African, titled The African Diaspora, Historical Analysis, Poetic Values and Methodology of Pedagogy, published in 2010. Having said that, quite a number, even looking at the Igbo Club National, I know about Igbo Association, I know about other ethnicity, based associations, and the idea of forging a link between their new homes overseas and, of course, their home of origins. So you can look at all those areas. I will call on Dr. Williams. What I'm going to do is unmute Williams. Mina Williams, you're on mute. If you are not, you can unmute yourself. Okay. You go first. Please keep it to 30 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Dr. Yebode, I really want to commend you on your wonderful presentation. I'm very impressed. At least we're looking at these issues from another perspective. However, I would like to disagree with you on certain issues. And while I also take note of your tables 1 and 2, where on the slides there are no sources, because in studies like this, I want to advise that we should have sources, especially when we are doing presentations like this, so that we are sure where these figures are actually coming out from. I'm very concerned about your use of the world systems theory in analyzing the issue in context. Because if you need to apply the world system theory, and you're saying that there is an exploitation by the urban centers, on the rural centers, you begin to, it becomes very doubtful, because if you look at the way the African system is structured, we'll begin to understand that most of these places that we are seen as urban centers today were one time or the other, they were all rural settings. And the way the structures are organized is different for you to begin to allude to the fact that the urban centers, particularly in Nigeria, are exploiting the rural centers. So I think I'm not comfortable with that. And again, you also say that it's always very difficult for migrants to integrate. I don't accept that, because no matter what it is, migrants will always, when the enabling environment is created for them to integrate, they definitely will integrate without losing their own identity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Williams. Of course, that also brought about the triadic relationship, the concept of triadic relationship, whereby you have in the Americas, for instance, Kwanzaa, creating the culture and the history of the people. I will call on Dr. Onwuberi.
Thank you, sir. Do I unmute myself? Okay, you unmuted me. Thank you, Prof. Dr. Oyebode, thank you for that very rich paper. Actually very rich, but I have a problem. Unfortunately, my audio icon also malfunctioned at a point, so I may not have got all you said. First, I want to ask, from the way you were talking about migrants and being sentimentally attached to their homelands, I have an impression that you are against them being attached. My question is, do you think it is wrong for people to want to identify from where they come from? Because I believe that God created people in different localities for a purpose. That's number one. Number two, please, can you just in a nutshell bring up the paradox in this is it this dysfunctional and functional aspect that you mentioned? Is that the paradox, or is there any other one? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for keeping to the 30 minutes. Dr. Okpara Duru, you are next. 30 seconds, please.
Okay, thank you, Prof, for giving me the opportunity to make this contribution. I join others to thank Dr. Oyebode for a wonderful presentation made. But my contribution is one. In this paper presentation, like while the paper was being presented by Dr. Oyebode, he was calling for the slide to be given to him. I think I would suggest that in subsequent papers, perhaps the presenter will be given the permission to be able to handle the slide presentation so that the person will know what to do at appropriate time. Then secondly, I just want to look at the contradiction, the point the presenter made arising from migration on COVID-19 pandemic, where he said that there was accusation based on suspicion of colonization and possible genocide by the southeastern state. And I'm trying to say that I think this suspicion is not only coming from the southeast part of the country, in the sense that the period when the migration of people were observed was the time the federal government has given ban on movement. I think both the southwest and the south-south were against this kind of migration at that particular time. So it will not be that it's only the southeast. I think it should be well captioned there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let me quickly react to your first comment. We have a structure, and the structure is that as a presenter, you're supposed to open up your PowerPoint while you present, and at our end, we have control of what you are supposed to present to the general audience. It has been the system, so I was expecting, because we discuss, and I usually call presenters on the Thursday, call on Saturday, and also do a follow-up an hour or so before we go on here. So again, I was trying to tell Dr. Oyebode, please follow your own slide also. And you see that it has never happened before. So if you are presenting for the future, you must always have a plan B. I have a plan B. My cell phone is also up. Anything can happen. So that is the response. And Dr. Oyebode does not have to respond to that. I have Dr. Ayetigo. I'm taking it in order of, your response to my request. If you have a question. Dr. Ayetigo, are you still there? I don't want to read your comment. Ayetigo, let me unmute you. You are still there. Okay, so it is Mr. Ayetigo. Can you please speak to what you posted? 30 seconds. Mr. Ayetigo, I do not want to read your posting. Well, while he is still preparing or trying to be camera ready, not shy, I will call on the Vice Chancellor, Professor Adamu, to make his comment or question.
Okay, thank you very much. 40, because I'm the Vice Chancellor. Everybody's given 30 and I'm giving all. Okay, I think the paper is clever. Very, very clever. Normally, when you present, they keep saying, oh, well done, fantastic, blah, 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 blah. But I've seen a lot of reactions that query the paper. And that's what we want. We want the paper to be queried. Adego, what are you removing from your mouth? Yama, yama. And you chop it. Okay. The fact is, he gave a lot of data, and instead of giving us empirical data, he shifted the data to other researchers that have done research a very, very long time ago, where the findings are no longer relevant. For instance, he quoted Fairchild, 1911, where he claims that American population does not increase. That's not true. You have a lot of Indians, Filipinos, and Mexicans migrating to the United States, to such an extent that the United States government is thinking of building a wall to prevent the Mexicans from coming in. So you should have looked at a much more updated paper of Fairchild. Oh, don't present your literature review uncritically, because that's what you just collected literature review and sort of put it all together, but without criticizing that particular literature review. If I were writing this paper, I would say Fairchild's conclusion in 1911 have been overtaken by events and so on. And then finally, the whole issue of Almajiri again. Anybody who is 18 years old cannot be called Almajiri. He has graduated. So all those people that you see moving out all over the place are not Almajiri. They're simply migrants, but not Almajiri. And I said all of us here are Almajiri, but let's not go into all that. But Ms. Bao, you made a very, very interesting, although anecdotal comment. You said somebody got rid of his Megad and then bought somebody else. Now, Nollywood film industry is fond of portraying Hausa as Megad. And somebody presented a paper saying that this is derogatory to the Hausa people in Germany. And another lady who happened to be Igbo, who grew up in Ikoyi, said, no. The reason why Hausa are employed as Megad is because of their trustworthiness. It's not derogatory. So this just confirms what you have said about that. So I think you need to, we have a lot of, in Kano, I come from Kano, that is in the north, core north. And we have a lot of non-indigents, but they have isolated themselves in an area called Sabangari. Sabangari means new town. You need to find out why did they isolate themselves there? Because the emir of Kano at that time told the British he doesn't want Christians within the walls of the city. You rarely find any Christian or any non-northerner from within the walls of the city. And yet, the Kano market served as a trans-Saharan trade route endpoint to such a now Niger, that is the Nupe, and all the others were able to surround the entire Kurmi market. I have a paper on that, which I can share with you, the diversity of that. In fact, the way in which other migrants come to Kano and blended themselves and they became part of Kano society. The only one that refused to do that are the Igbos. But the Yoruba have entered into Kano city, into a particular area called Yakase. You may have heard of Tanko Yakase. Well, Yakase is an area in Kano, and a lot of Yoruba live there. They integrated. Nobody would even know that they are Yoruba. But the Igbos have kept themselves only in Sabangari. They don't enter into the city. Maybe because there are more Muslims among the Yoruba, and therefore they feel more comfortable in the city than there are Muslims. There are very few Igbo Muslims, so they decide to keep themselves to where their churches are. So I think you need to do an empirical study of all these kind of issues. Number two, you need to crystallize the references that it's not enough to just simply pick up a reference and say somebody said it. You have to comment. You have to tell us whether you agree or disagree. we can say go a lot of all sort of references, but what does it say? Where are you? Do you believe it? Or is there any new data that contradicts that? And you have to present your data in such a way that shows that one person agrees, another person disagrees. That is what scholarship is all about, not just giving one-dimensional approach to the whole thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chancellor. And I think if he can do that, he will have validated his own qualitative methodology. In other words, you do not just state the state of knowledge, but you also critique the state of knowledge to make your work relevant, okay, and for further inquiry. Last but not the least, I'll take Professor Gregory Okagbari. You have 30 seconds, sir. Thank you. I've unmuted you.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to say that the paper should have at least made some suggestions on how some of these negative tendencies associated with immigration can be mitigated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then I think I will take that back. Let's see, before you respond, Professor Sogolo, sir. I've unmuted you. You can unmute yourself, sir. Professor Sogolo.
Yes, I have no question.
Ah, okay, sir. All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, somebody is raising up his hand with this. Okay, Professor Iyabode Nwakweze, 20 seconds. Let me unmute you, because we are almost out of our time, and I don't want to get a query from the elders.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, I just have a quick question about a comment about something. Now he was talking about maybe people being somewhere and then they are still attached to their homeland. And for me, it is being human. Because now many of us are sensitive about what's happening in America now because of the Black Lives Matter and all of that. So I think this is being human. So that's just the comment I want to make about it.
Thank you very much. And it also validates for those of us that are in the African diaspora scholarship, what we call the triadic relationship. Yes, absolutely. Recreation of your culture, of your history, while outside of your homeland. Thank you. Dr. Oyebode, you have just let's give you 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Put us 12:02.
Thank you, sir. I want to appreciate all those who have contributed, and I still want to emphasize that this is an ongoing research. I've been limited by the present COVID-19 to be able to conduct an interview with people, and I quite appreciate the different issues that have been raised. But let me quickly point it out that when we are talking of paradox of migration, we are not talking of only the negativity, and we are just talking about the contradictions. And that quickly takes me to the last commentator. We are not saying that people don't have the right to be sentimental, but we are saying that when we look at migration, people, it's like you want to, there's one Yoruba proverb, you say you don't need something, you throw it away, yet you say don't throw it away foul. You want to leave your home because you think things are terribly bad there, and you want to pick on the new settlement. And when you get to that new settlement, you want to claim ownership of that settlement, and at the same time get attachment to where you have migrated. Then there's a paradox there. So I've not said again that people have not investigated or they have not written on paradox of migration. What I've only said is that in Nigeria, I've not been able to locate one. But now that you have suggested some to me, thank you for that. I will get the full reference and probably add to the paper. The comment on the authorities that I've cited is because of time limitation of presentation. In the exam paper, I've criticized some of these findings, and I've also established the present scenario. But that of Fairchild, for example, it said that while migrants are bringing new things, there is the tendency that the local people are likely to be dropping. For example, when we talk of employment opportunities for migrants, some jobs are considered to be dirty by hosts. And as they are dropping these jobs for the migrants continue to become more prominent in that area of engagement. So the sources of my data, sorry, I data discovered yesterday that I have not put them there. I've added it to my own PowerPoint, which I thought I would be able to demonstrate. But I clicked on share, and it's telling me that I was not given permission to do that. So but that is well included in the paper. The systems theory, I've only used it with relevance to the modern day time. It is incontrovertible that the urban rural areas are the one making the urban center comfortable. When we talk of plank, when we talk of food, we get all this from the rural areas. But how much development have we taken to the rural areas? And I've also highlighted some of the failed programs that have been embarked upon in the past to improve the rural areas. As long as the rural areas are not developed, that means the metropolitan civilization is not in their favor. Dr. Weber, you talk about sentimental attachments, and I've also answered that. Thank you, everybody. I think
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Yebode, for responding. I just need to quickly say this, that in the last two presentations, we have seriously, and when I say we, I mean all the participants have moved beyond this idea of vandalism. Oh, very good paper, good boy, good girl, you know, blah, blah, blah. And of course, we thank God that the VC is witnessing this. In fact, the last presenter, Dr. Adegoke, was really, really sweating because of the so many positive comments, which of course will improve his paper, the quality of his paper. Let me announce as we close that the Center of Excellence in Migration and Global Studies have the following outlets that whether you are an employee of NOUN or you are a colleague outside NOUN, we will be looking at a Migration and Global Studies book series, the booklet. We are also interested in starting occasional paper series. And then last but not the least, we're starting a NOUN Journal of Migration and Global Studies. All will be peer reviewed. There will be no prebendalism. Don't call me or member of the editorial if you know them that you need a paper for your promotion. That is not the way things are done. You publish towards promotion. You don't publish for promotion. Thank you very much. Again, we pray for the repose of Dr. Sanusi's soul. For those who did not join us on time, we prayed. We observe a moment of silence and pray for him. And we continue to pray that Almighty God will repose his gentle soul and comfort the family. On that note, I say Nagode. Nagode, and thank you very much. I think I'm trying to unmute you, but you can unmute yourself. Bye-bye. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Now you have copy of the PowerPoint on our WhatsApp. I will post to the Telegram also. Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.